Good morning. Welcome to First Unitarian Church of Wilmington, Delaware, to our streaming Unitarian Universalist service this morning. My name is Helen Foss, and I'm delighted to welcome you in my role as worship associate today. Welcome to you, no matter the hue of your skin or the origin of your ethnicity. Welcome no matter whom you love or wherever you are on your spiritual journey. You are welcome here. If you're new to First Unitarian, I invite you to check out our website, firstuuwilm.org, to learn more about us and to sign up for our email newsletter. Welcome to this morning's service. Reverend Larry will be reflecting on moments or points of awakenings for us as individuals, and also awakening moments within our Unitarian Universalist denomination. Whether on the personal or denominational level, each have the potential to propel us in new directions. And later in our service, Doyle Dobbins will launch our stewardship drive to secure the funding for our congregation's work together. As I mulled over the theme of today's service, I turned to our trusty UUA website and the section on our 7 principles. And there it was, today's theme embedded within our second principle. As Unitarian Universalists, we affirm and promote justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, unquote. Compassion is something that we can easily act on individually, demonstrating openness, giving people respect, treating people with kindness on our own. But we need one another to achieve equity and justice. This morning, let us explore moments of awakening for us as individuals and as a congregation, and how those moments guide us to live out our faith and our principles. And now, let us prepare our hearts and minds for worship.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Larry Piers. And before I share our opening words, I just want to take a moment and imagine your faces. And maybe you can join me in that activity. Bring to mind the faces of those in our congregation who you miss, who you long to connect with once again. May we feel that sense of connection with one another during this time of worship. Our words for our call to worship and the title of the sermon this morning come from a song from the Gulag culture of the Georgia Sea Islands. One way to understand these verses is to be glad for this day that we are in. So indeed, this is just the day that is. A day when our deepest hopes for a world of true justice may arise and be among us. So here are the words that we'll also hear in a song later in this service. Yonder come day, day is a breaking. Yonder come day, O my soul. Yonder come day. Day is a breaking. Sun is a rising in my soul.
If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to join me by lighting it as I read these words by UU Reverend Julianne Lepp. It's called Open to Unexpected Answers. We seek our place in the world and the answers to our heart's deep questions. As we seek, may our hearts be open to unexpected answers. May the light of our chalice remind us that this is a community of warmth, of wisdom, and welcoming of multiple truths.
I woke up this morning with my mind,
and it was stayed on freedom.
Woke up this morning with my mind,
And it was stayed on freedom.
Woke up this morning with my mind,
And it was stayed on freedom.
Hallelujah,
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 hallelujah, hallelujah.
I was walking and talking with my mind,
And it was stayed on freedom.
walking and talking with my mind,
Stayed on freedom.
walking and talking with my mind,
And it was stayed on freedom.
Hallelujah,
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 hallelujah, hallelujah.
I was singing and praying with my
And
mind,
it was stayed on freedom.
singing and praying with my
And
mind,
it was stayed on freedom.
singing and praying with my
And
mind,
it was stayed on freedom.
Hallelujah,
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 hallelujah, hallelujah.
Oh, I woke up this morning with my mind,
And it was stayed on freedom.
woke up this morning with my mind,
And it was stayed on freedom.
woke up this morning with my
And
mind,
it was stayed on freedom.
Hallelujah,
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 hallelujah, hallelujah.
Please join me in affirming our mission. First Unitarian Church of Wilmington is a beloved community that nourishes minds and spirits, fights injustice, and transforms the world through loving action.
Today, I am sharing a wisdom tale called The King's Highway. Once upon a time, a king had a great highway built for the people of his kingdom. After it was completed, but before it was open to all, the king decided to have a contest. He invited everyone in the land to participate. The challenge was to see who could travel the highway the best. The winner was to receive a box of gold. On the day of the contest, the people came. Some drove fine chariots. Some had fine clothing and fancy food to make the trip a luxurious journey. Some ran the length of the highway to show their skill. All day they traveled the highway, and on arriving at the end, many complained to the king about a large pile of rocks and debris that had been left almost blocking the road at one point, hindering their travel. At the end of the day, a lone traveler crossed the finish line and walked over to the king. He was tired and dirty, but he addressed the king with respect and handed him a small chest of gold. He said, "I stopped along the way to clear a pile of rocks and debris that was blocking the road. This chest of gold was under it. Please have it returned to the rightful owner." The king replied, "You are the rightful owner." And the traveler responded, "Oh no, this is not mine. I've never known such money." "Oh yes," said the king, "you've earned this gold, for you won my contest. He who travels the road best is he who makes the road smoother for those who will follow." I wonder how our Unitarian, Universalist, and Unitarian Universalist ancestors smoothed the road for us. I wonder what we can do to help smooth the way for those who come after us.
This morning, I want to offer a loving kindness meditation as a way for us to be with all that is our life. As I offer this meditation, let your mind rest in the phrases. You can be aware of the phrases either with your breath or just in themselves. The focus of your attention, therefore, is on the phrases. Let your mind rest with them. Feelings will come and feelings will go. First, let us offer loving kindness to ourselves. May I be free from danger. May I have mental happiness. May I have physical happiness. May I have ease of well-being. And now let us send loving kindness to a neutral party. You might think of a friend, a shopkeeper, someone that you see but don't have a story about them. May you be free from danger. May you have mental happiness. May you have physical happiness. May you have ease of well-being. Now send loving kindness to somebody that you may have difficulty with. I'll take a moment for you to decide who to focus on. May you be free from danger. May you have mental happiness. May you have physical happiness. May you have ease of well-being. And now let us extend our loving kindness to all beings. May all beings be free from danger. May they have mental happiness. May they have physical happiness. May they have ease of well-being. All creatures, known or unknown, near or far, some we like, some we don't like, some we're neutral towards, still they have this wish to be happy, to be free. May it be so. Every being, all places, may they be able to realize the fruits of just what it is that we wish for ourselves. For all that is our life, for all that is ours to do, may we feel strengthened and emboldened in the task before us. So may it be. During this shared silence, let us bring to mind and to heart those that we hold with a special joy or a special care on this morning. You may state their name aloud at home. You may write that joy or their name or your concern in the chat. And during this shared silence, we will hold them in our hearts. May all whose names were spoken, those that were written in the chat, find peace and healing on this day.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we
From you I receive, to you
The reading this morning is why I almost didn't read my poem at the inauguration by Amanda Gorman. By the time the sun rose, I knew one thing for sure. I was going to be the 2021 inaugural poet. I can't say I was completely confident in my choice, but I was completely committed to it. I'm a firm believer that often terror is trying to tell us of a force far greater than despair. In this way, I look at fear not as cowardice, but as a call forward, a summons to fight for what we hold dear. And now, more than ever, we have every right to be afflicted, affected, affronted. If you're alive, you're afraid. If you're not afraid, then you're not paying attention. The only thing we have to fear is having no fear itself, having no feeling on behalf of whom and what we've lost, whom and what we love.
Thank you, Helen. In this excerpt from her New York Times piece, Amanda Gorman shares with us what it was like for her prior to standing up to deliver her poem at the presidential inauguration in January 2021. Think about it. The very steps that she would be speaking from had absorbed the terror that echoed in this space since that horrendous siege on January 6th. The barricades around the Capitol and the National Guard soldiers were still in place around the Capitol. Sitting in her audience were some of those who claimed that the 2020 presidential election was illegitimate and claiming this without any substantial evidence. Just weeks before, the attack had led to 9 people dead, more than 150 law enforcement officers injured, and many in our government were terrorized. We know more, even now, that people in high places had tried to interrupt or to intercept the peaceful transfer of power, if not violently, at least through an attempted procedural maneuver. Amanda Gorman's fear was more than understandable on the days leading up to her appearance on those Capitol steps. Even our own continued fear is understandable when just this week, a national political committee dared to call those actions on January 6th legitimate political discourse. Now, I remember feeling fear watching the inauguration, but I was sitting comfortably in the warmth of my own living room, 150 miles away. Gorman offers these words to us, which I think deserve to be repeated. They speak to us directly about the moment that we are in. If you're alive, you're afraid. If you're not afraid, then you're not paying attention. The only thing we have to fear is having no fear itself, having no feeling on behalf of whom and what we've lost, whom and what we love. It is how we respond to our fears that matters. For Gorman, her fears were a motivating force that propelled her forward into that inaugural stage and to offer her poetry to a wounded American soul. For her, the alternative of having no feeling on behalf of whom and what we've lost, whom and what we love, would be the lesser option. She dared to rise up and to speak to the moment she was in. Indeed, in my opinion, paying attention to the moment that we are in and to awaken in it is the primary human religious task. There are so many forces around us and within us that would lull us into insouciance, into a lack of concern and indifference about our own lives or the life of the common good. It's too easy for us to fall into overwhelm and into slumber. It's too common to gravitate towards autopilot. Even our showing up as a faith community on a Sunday morning for worship, virtually, is part of our vibrant testimony as a faith community that how we orient our lives matters. What we value matters. That how we are in the world matters. If we affirm, as we do in our UU principles, that justice, equity, and compassion in human relations matters, then it is a bold and courageous act for us to gather together and to dare to ask ourselves in this moment, this very moment that we are in, how do we genuinely embody that principle? Now, sometimes when we gather, we are in deep need of personal support and inspiration in order to carry on. Sometimes when we gather, we are here to celebrate life, its joys and its wonders, and the awe of life itself. Sometimes we gather here to discern what is next for us to do as an individual or as a congregation in a world that beckons us toward some response. Even when we light our chalice on Sundays, we recognize that we have been entrusted with the flickering flame of our Unitarian Universalist faith. And it's up to us. It's up to each generation to discern how best to respond in the moment that we are in. We have inherited and aligned ourselves with a faith that proclaims it's not enough for us to rest only on ancient texts or the same interpretation of those texts. No, we have dared to show up and to awaken, to carefully and intentionally read the events of our lives and the events of our time, to be in that moment that we're in and to try to make sense of it all, rather than merely to react to it or sit on the sidelines. It's a courageous act for us to show up for worship on a Sunday morning, to testify that it matters. It matters that we are here. How we live our lives matters. how we respond to the world matters. But yet it is not enough for us to glow in the past accomplishments of Unitarian Universalists if we are not also showing up in our own time, willing to testify and to embody what we hold dear, and to bring forth the possibilities in our own individual lives, a new humanity, and a better world in our own moment. Ours is not a rear view mirror faith. We are living in a particular moment in which we can choose to excuse ourselves until it's all over. How many of you feel like excusing yourself until it's all over, till the current crisis we're in is over? Raise your hand. Okay. It's understandable. Yet we dare to pay attention. We dare to wake up, to awaken in the moment that we are in as individuals, as a religious movement, and as a congregation. I recently spoke to a small group of emerging leaders, young people in their 20s and 30s, from Jewish, Muslim, and Christian backgrounds. And when I spoke to them of some of the challenges of leading in not just the times that we are in, but also leading towards what is on the horizon for us, one young Jewish woman in the group said just bluntly and honestly, "It's all so overwhelming." Her comment stopped me in my tracks. There was a part of me that felt like saying so matter-of-factly, "Of course it is." But then I found a way to sit back within myself, to empathize with her, and to take time to absorb what it actually must feel like for her to be launching her work in the world right now. She caused me, by her comment, to metaphorically, at least, sit alongside of her and to recognize that indeed it is an overwhelming time. We are, as some have said, in an age of overwhelm. Yet, we need, in spite of that, to consistently gather together, to uphold one another, to support one another, to draw strength from one another. We need to remind one another of the deeper sources of our faith that may allow us to show up in a particular way, with a particular intention, in spite of it all and because of it all. In spite of current circumstances, we can still show up in a particular way. In the Jewish tradition, the prophets often called people into recognizing the moment that they were in and called them into some kind of response, rather than merely succumbing to their oppression or their patterns of compliance with what is. In Hebrew, the word pay attention is lasim lev, literally to put lev, to put heart into something. We, as Unitarian Universalists, are inheritors of that same prophetic religious tradition that calls us to not merely succumb to oppressive systems through denial or compliance. We are in that same stream of religious traditions that call us to pay attention and to put our heart into something. Let's take a moment now and think about what are the things that you feel lured towards to put your heart into at this moment in your own life, at this moment in this world that we share? What are those things where you want to put your heart into them? Bring yourself, bring your attention, bring your care, bring your compassion to those situations, whether they're personal or social. Do you have something? We are reminded again and again to awaken to the moment. On the individual level, this means that we gather as a congregation sometimes together to remind each other to wake up when being in cruise control is more fashionable, more comfortable, more convenient. We gather as a congregation to remind each other to be good stewards of our life when just getting by would seem like just enough. We gather as a congregation to persist, to remind each other to persist through and with our fears that might otherwise hold us back. In these indeed overwhelming moments that we are in, we need to look at each other in the eye. We need to be able to state our fears, acknowledge our overwhelm, and hopefully find, as Amanda Gorman advises, to look at fear not as cowardice, but as a call forward, a summons to fight for what we hold dear. All of us have our own individual relationship with fear. The psychologist Susan Jeffries, in her book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, has her own relationship to fear. And she advises us to, in this way. Every time you take a step into the unknown, she says, you experience fear. There's no point in saying, when I'm no longer afraid, then I will do it. She says you'll be waiting a long time. That fear is part of the package. This should be a relief. You are not the only one out there feeling fear. Everyone feels fear when taking a step into the unknown. Yes, all those people who have succeeded in doing what they have wanted to do in life have felt the fear and did it anyway. With each step you take into the unknown territory, a pattern of strength develops. You begin feeling stronger and stronger and stronger. Do you know this in your own life? When in spite of fear you move forward? When in spite of what was unknown you decided to take a step forward? Sometimes we can move through and with our fear in order to actually show up differently and intentionally. Sometimes we need someone else to show up with us or alongside of us until we can find our own ways to respond. Now, I remember hearing in theological school that the most common, often repeated phrase in the Bible was the phrase, "Fear not." Now, I never really took the time to count it, but someone claims that the phrase is repeated 365 times. You know where I might be leading with this? That would mean that there's one "fear not" for each day of the year. And if you're like me, I'll take it. I'll take every one of them each day if it will propel me forward into this life, into bringing forth possibilities that I otherwise might not move towards or enact. I've been reading a lot from the Transcendentalists in preparation for our spiritual retreat, which is now happening at the end of this month. I've come to understand more clearly their influence on our contemporary Unitarian Universalist ways of faithing. We as Unitarian Universalists are oriented to awaken to a life lived consciously and reflectively. Thoreau says it this way, to live deliberately. Emerson, in his essay, Nature, captures and reminds us to awaken by stating it this way. The foregoing generations beheld God and nature face to face, we through their eyes. Why should not we also enjoy an original relation to the universe? Why should we not have a poetry of insight and not of tradition, and a religion by revelation to us and not the history of theirs? Why should we grope? This is the sentence I like the most. Why should we grope among the dry bones of the past? The sun also rises today. Yonder come day. We gather to keep awakening in the moment and to keep our religion making fresh in each of those moments. Rather than rely on the past, we build upon the past and open to the revelations that life is showing us and calling us toward in this moment. And yet, it is not for ourselves alone that we gather. So much of our tradition is also about gathering together in order to make a difference in the world that we share, to assume our proper human vocation, to engage in the continuing co-creation of the world. As Catherine Williamson, our Director of Faith Formation for Children and Youth, shared in the story for all ages this morning, The King's Highway, this wisdom should ring true for us as well. The one who travels the road best is the one who smooths the road for those who come after us. This, I believe, is our religious obligation as well. To be awakened in the moment is central to our religious path as individuals, but it's also, for us, a long tradition of awakening to the moment of the history that we are in as well. Our religious tradition calls us to look directly at the reality of the world. Our contemporary Unitarian Universalist minister, Reverend Joanna Fontaine Crawford, who ministers in Texas, stated our mission in this succinct way. And maybe this will be the only sentence you'll remember from this sermon. It deserves certainly a t-shirt, and it actually has one. It deserves a bumper sticker. Maybe you'll get one. That sentence is this: love the hell out of the world. Love the hell out of the world. Our transcendentalist ancestors, even though they were certainly opening to new revelations within themselves and through nature around them, did not neglect the social world. In fact, they were also prophetic activists who, loving nature, fought racism, sought equal rights regardless of gender or sexual differences, and they yearned for greater economic equity and equality of opportunity. For them, personal transformation and social transformation were intertwined, not necessarily separate. So we join with those in all religions who recognize that in each moment of history, our religion, if it is to be lived out fully, calls us to not just awake, but to respond to the moment that we're in. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel demonstrated this in his own life when he joined other religious leaders from around the country in the march from Selma to Montgomery in 1965. Heschel wrote of that moment of marching by saying, "For many of us, the march from Selma to Montgomery was about protest and prayer. Legs are not lips, and walking is not kneeling, and yet our legs uttered songs. Even without words, our march was worship. I felt my legs were praying." Imagine the fear that those marchers must have felt proceeding with that march after the horrors of that bloody, what has been called Bloody Sunday, when those who had tried to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge were clubbed, trampled, and tear-gassed, 600 of them, with the young John Lewis leading the way. It was after that event that Martin Luther King Jr. called clergy of all faiths to join him in Selma. King called Unitarian ministers that he had met when he was a student at Boston University School of Theology. Word spread from one minister to another, and they responded to that call. I came to realize as I was reading my colleague, Reverend Mark Morrison Reed's book, The Selma Awakening, that over the years I have met and known many of those Unitarian Universalist ministers who went to Selma, including a former minister of this church, Reverend Bob Doss. Many joined that march, and one of those who joined that march was Clark Olson, who much later in life became a member of a church in Boston where I served. You might know the story. He, along with two other UU ministers, were attacked by 4 locals with baseball bats, metal pipes, or clubs of some type. All were injured, and James Reed, a Unitarian minister, tragically died from those injuries. The death galvanized the country. The death of Reverend James Reed galvanized Unitarian Universalists to awaken to the moment that they were in. Martin Luther King eulogized Reed with these verses from Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. "And if he should die, take his body and cut it into little stars. He will make the face of heaven so fine that all the world will be in love with night." King went on to add that these verses eloquently describe the radiant life of James Reed. His death was a result of a sensitive religious spirit. His crime was that he dared to live his faith. He placed himself along the disinherited black brethren of his community. At this moment in time, so this is the work of our day. This is where we must pray with our feet. So we gather together at First Unitarian Church rather than retreat from the march, from the work. We help one another to awaken to the moment in study groups and soul matters groups and retreats and service to the hungry within our community and care for the earth and the earth's limited resources and care for young adults who need help in order to be able to establish independent living for themselves after being in foster care. This is our work. We endeavor to help parents and youth to catch the spirit of this faith that calls us to awaken in our personal lives and to awaken and respond forthrightly to the common world that we share. Undeterred by this pandemic, we gather and worship, even if it's just online. Or we gather and worship in the building when conditions allow. We weave together a community that holds us in our fear and in our overwhelm. when we need that, and calls us into care for one another when that is what's been needed. We've inherited on this corner in Wilmington a faith that others have tended for decades before us, and we've taken up the song, and we've carried forth the flame into our own time. We are a free religion, and it requires our investment to carry on the legacy of this congregation and to live into our potential of each moment. You've begun to hear about our Giving with Intention Stewardship campaign, which is being launched on this Sunday. This is our moment to respond, to give to our faith, to give to our possibilities, and to give with intention. The Universalists, Minister Reverend Olympia Brown, speaks to us across all the ages. She was a woman ordained, first woman ordained by a denomination in the 1800s. And she says to us, be loyal to this faith which has placed before you the loftiest ideals, which has comforted you in sorrow and strengthened you for noble duty and made the world beautiful for you. You are worthy to be entrusted with this great message, she says. You are strong enough to work for a great true principle without counting the cost. Go on finding ever new applications of these truths and new enjoyments in their contemplation. So may it be.
Step by step, the longest march can be won, can be won. Many stones can form an arch, singly none, singly none. And by union, what we will can be accomplished still. Drops of water turn a mill, singly none, singly none. Step by step, the longest march can be won, can be won. Many stones can form an arch, singly none, singly none. And by union, what we will can be accomplished still. Drops of water turn a mill, singly none, singly none.
Good morning. My name is Doyle Dobbins, and I'm pleased to be here with you this morning for our stewardship moment. And we will be talking about our stewardship because today is the day that we've set aside to kick off our stewardship pledging campaign for this year. And, we need everybody to be involved in the campaign in order for it to be successful. I want to give you just some brief information. We have a theme for our campaign. The theme is giving with intention. Now, giving, we give all sorts of things. We give time, talent, and resources, and pledging is related to resources. So when we say give with intention, we're also urging you to pledge with intention. And in addition to having a theme, we also have a goal. Our goal is $490,000. Now, those who analyze the church programs and activities and the resources needed have concluded that this is a good goal. It's a goal for us for next year, and it's the amount that we need in order for the church to have all of the operating resources that it needs, as well as the programmatic resources. So it's a good goal, a bit of a reach goal, but it's a goal that we should be able to achieve. And so we might ask ourselves, well, how do we really achieve this goal? And I would say, well, it takes every member, every friend of First U to participate. It's like any ball game. You know, all the players on the team have to participate. And here in our church, in order for us to be successful, to be healthy and thriving as a congregation, we all need to participate. But when you think about pledging is quite personal. And I'm pleased to say that today we have someone who will share with us her personal reasons for being a member of the church and for supporting the church with an annual pledge. Her name is Jan Shea. Now, I'm sure most of you know Jan because she's quite active in the church. She sings in the choir. She serves as a worship associate and is involved in other ways as well. So let's take a few minutes, a moment at least, and listen to her video that she has recorded, and she will explain her personal reasons for being a member of the church and for pledging.
Henry Wadsworth Longfellow wisely said, "Give what you have. To someone, it may be better than you dare to think." Stewardship comes in many forms. During our annual stewardship campaign, I like to focus not just on what I will give, but on why. Why exactly is First U important to me, and why do I give both my money and my time? First U is where I go to sing and to hear great music, to learn and to teach, to receive support and to support others, to find a peaceful and loving spiritual home and to help create one, to be accepted and to offer acceptance to my spiritual family, to explore my inner self and to seek a spiritual path free from judgment or dogma, to explore my community and to seek ways to make it stronger, and to be regularly reminded that love will guide us. First U, this place, these people, they guide my feet, they enrich my life. They are priceless to me. So every year, as Henry suggests, I give what I have to the spiritual home that I love so much.
Thank you, Jan, for that very personal and sincere description of why you are a member and why you are willing to make an annual pledge. And to wrap up this time of talking about our campaign, I'd like to just invite you to do 3 things. That's 1, 2, 3. Okay, the first one is to think or contemplate. Think intentionally about your pledge. Contemplate what the pledge is about, what it's for. And if you care to, you might discuss your pledge with a spouse or a partner or a close friend. But think about your pledge. That's number 1. Number 2 is to decide. Decide what your pledge will be. Now, that may be a little bit more difficult, but probably not too difficult because we all make personal decisions of this sort. So the second thing is to decide what your pledge will be. And then of course, number 3 is to actually make the pledge. And this is quite easy to do as well. You can go on the church website and find a link there, and you can bring up the pledge form and fill it out, and you will have completed the process in just a few minutes. Or you can call the church office if you prefer, and they can help you with the process of making your pledge. But let me remind you, number one is to think about your pledge, discuss it with others if you need to. Number two, decide what your pledge will be. And let me just add, since we have this kind of a stretch goal, when you decide what your pledge will be, hopefully most of us will be able to increase our pledge over this year's pledge if we made a pledge for this year. So keep that in mind as you decide what your pledge will be. And number three, make your pledge. Make your pledge ASAP. Now, what does that stand for? As soon as possible. We urge you to do that, and if you do, and if we all do that, we will have a very successful stewardship pledging campaign. And I might say that pledging is really giving for the future. So let's have a successful stewardship pledging campaign for the health and welfare of our church for the coming year. Thank you very much for that. And now let's come back to today. Today, as we do every week, we invite you to make your donations to the church if you care to do so. And we offer remind you of 3 ways that you can do that. First, just write a check and put it in the mail, sending it to the church. Second, go to the church website and bring up the area that deals with donating. Click where you need to and make your donation. Or the third way is to use the Smart app and make your donation with your iPhone. And so now as we prepare to dedicate our offering, which we do every week, I would like for you to expand the idea of the dedication to include the stewardship pledging campaign. So as we say the traditional words, let's think of it as giving today and giving forward by making our pledge. And so let's now say together, to the work of this congregation, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives, and these are offerings.
Yonder come day, day is a breaking. Yonder come day, oh my soul. Yonder come day, day is a breaking. Sun is a rising in my soul. Yonder come day, day is a breaking. Yonder come day, oh my soul. Yonder come day, day is a breaking. Sun is a rising in my soul. Yonder come day, day is a breaking. Yonder come day, oh my soul. Yonder come day, day is a breaking. Sun is a rising in my soul. Yonder, day is a breaking. Yonder come day, oh my soul. Yonder come day, day is a breaking. Sun is a rising in my soul. Well, yonder come day, day is a breaking. Yonder come day, oh my soul. Yonder come day, day is a rising. Sun is a rising in my soul. Yonder, day is a breaking. Yonder, 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 day is a breaking. Sun is a rising in my soul.
How blessed we are to have such wonderful music this morning. I want to say before I read the closing words that immediately following our service, you'll see some of the announcement slides just for about 5 minutes or so. That gives you an opportunity to go grab a cup of coffee, do what you need to do before you join one of our virtual cafe groups, which this morning is sponsored by the Human Rights Task Force, and it'll be a kind of introduction to the book groups on Some of Us by Heather McGee. So hopefully you'll be able to join in one of those groups soon after our service concludes. Get up, child. Pull your bones upright. Gather your skin and muscle into a patch of sun. Tired as you are not alone. There are others weeping and rising. You belong to them, and they to you. And together, we will break through.
If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to extinguish it as I read additional words by UU minister Reverend Audette Fulbrett Fulson. Do not think we are finished. Oh no, we will never be finished, never just done, until the light of justice is lit behind every eye. We have come to take back the world that is the inheritance of better children, better lovers, better days. May it be so.